Hi everybody, welcome to another time to talk to you about Judaism, especially to our Jewish brethren, many of whom have never received a Jewish education, just picking up bits here and there, not understanding the beauty of Judaism, the divinely given Torah and the Bible that God has given to us in front of 3 million people who stood there on Mount Sinai. Look, today we are celebrating the holiday of Hanukkah, right? And that's on the 25th day of the month of Kislev. Of course, this program is being pre-recorded on December 18th, and what I wanted to show you is our Hanukkah menorah, which is different than the menorah that stood in the temple. But basically, it was commemorating the victory that the Jewish people fought for many years against the Syrian oppressors, and on the 25th of Kislev, they occupied the liberated territory of Jerusalem and the Holy Temple. And they only found a cruse of oil, which was just for one day, and the holiday was until they get another cruse of oil. It took 8 days, but miraculously, the oil, which was only for one day's use, lasted for 8 days. So, in commemoration of that miracle, we light candles or wicks 8 on each day of the 8-day period. And here is what we have: a oil holder, right? Take olive oil, put it into one of these slots, and then we have a floater, which is a piece of cork overlaid by a little piece of aluminum, and the cork enables the floater to float enables the flame to float on the oil, and at the same time it draws the oil into the wick. So that floater keeps on going down and down, but the flame can be seen and lasts for a good period of time. So that's our candelabra, and that's our Hanukkah menorah, and we use it every holiday. And we put it into the in the window, right? We put it in the window so that we can publicize the fact that it was a miracle, and for all to see and to show that miracle which happened on the 25th of Kislev many years ago. Actually, what happened after they defeated the Greeks, and the Syrian Greeks, these Hellenizers went away because they lost the war. And the group that started the revolution against the Greeks were the Maccabee family, and many of them died in the revolt, but the last of the Maccabee was Shimon HaMaccabee, and he was the leader of the Jewish people after they reclaimed the temple and the Jewish Holy Land. So that was on the 25th of Kislev in the month of on the Jewish calendar. So what had happened was that Shimon Maccabee was in control, and they started to tidy up things. Unfortunately, many had not received a Jewish education during the war, and Shimon ben Shattach imposed a compulsory education when his sister was the ruler several years later, right? His sister was Shalamis, and those years the sages did a great deal of accomplishments. But after Shimon HaMaccabee, he had one son, and his name was Yochanan Hyrcanus. And he proclaimed himself the Kohen Gadol, the priest in charge, and he had some opposition from the sages, the Chachamim, the learned class, because the Talmud says that a captive woman's child shall not be served as a Kohen Gadol, and there was a question as to whether his mother was a captive during that period. So Yochanan Hyrcanus was the son of Shimon HaMaccabee, and Yochanan Hyrcanus reigned for a long time as the Kohen Gadol, and he was a staunch traditionalist, meaning Torah Masorah, Torah from Sinai, and the explanation of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. So he was a traditionalist and a God-fearing man, but the powers that were around him were Hellenizers, and their names were changed to Sadducees, right? The Sadducees and the Pharisees. We are descendants of the Pharisees, but the Sadducees were like the Reform today, reinvent the wheel, try to put in some real news and make the whole fake scenario that they present as something that is true, like the Reform want to do today with their trickery and wanting to be on equal plane, so to speak. Like, they're making a big to do. They need a separate area around the temple wall in Jerusalem so that they can pray how they were accustomed to, whatever that means, because they're never into their synagogues and to prayer. As a matter of fact, they don't even believe in God. They believe in evolution. Yet they want to do, because their strength and power and resources is great, so they want to try to reinvent the wheel like many others fifth columnists have done throughout the ages. So where were we? Back in the Hanukkah time, Yochanan Hyrcanus was persuaded by the powers after many years to become a Sadducee and not believe entirely in the oral Torah. Josephus, a historian, was paid by the Sadducees to write history to make it sound like they were really great people, and they did many great things. That was according to Josephus, the historian, who was paid by the Sadducees to write the history. I don't want to dwell too much on the area of Hanukkah and historical political events that happened, but after, again, we have Shimon HaMaccabee was the last of the Maccabees. He had a son, Yochanan Hyrcanus. He reigned many years, and towards the end became antagonistic toward the sages because they ruled against him and his mother. So whatever. So anyway, Yochanan Hyrcanus had two children, Aristobulus and Alexander Yanai. And Aristobulus died, and his widow Shalamis became the wife of Alexander Yanai. But she had the power. She had the power. That was during the the mitzvah of Yibun. So they kept many of the Torah dictates, whereby a son who dies and he has another wife, another a brother who is not married, he can take his widow can be taken if she agrees during the ceremony of chalitza, etc. Anyway, so she had power. Shalamis had power for 9 years, and Shimon ben Shattach, her brother, did a great amount of work with the children, and compulsory public education was instituted, because previously it was done by father to son, but since the war, many of the fathers were not knowledgeable in Torah. So that was Shimon ben Shattach, right? So what happened? You had Alexander Yanai, and Alexander Yanai had 2 sons, right? Aristobulus, number 2, because he was named after his brother who was deceased, right? Aristobulus 2, and again, Alexander Yanai had 2 sons, Aristobulus II and Hyrcanus. And what happened? These 2 sons wanted the power. They were not that observant, and they threatened their mother and the whole to-do. You can read about it in Torah Nation by Rabbi Millers. Torah Nation. Get the book. Torah Nation. So that. So what happened? Yeah. So these 2 brothers fought for power, and they finally deposed Shalamis, who was the righteous queen, and Shimon ben Shattach had to flee the country, and they both had equal powers. These 2 sons, Aristobulus II and Hyrcanus. And what happened? They fought, and they brought in different kinds of allies to fight one with the other. And one thing was the Edomites, who were forcibly converted, meaning that the conversion was really not a true conversion by the high priest Yochanan Hyrcanus. So they were brought into the fray, and one brother brought in Antipater, the Edomite, and he brought in his family, and his father was Herod the Wicked, and then they both went to Rome to seek Rome's help, and the poor masses were going about their business, following the Torah concepts. And unfortunately, after many years, Rome says, yeah, we'll take over, we'll favor Hyrcanus, I believe, and they were the powers behind the scene. So it came from Hellenizers, right? Hellenizers, after Alexander the Great died, his kingdom was split up. By the way, Alexander the Great was really a great friend to the Jews. Shimon HaTzadik, the previous high priest during the reign of the first temple, was great friends with Alexander the Great. But once he died, the kingdom was broken up, and the Hellenizers took over, and they wanted to do away with the Jewish people. They wanted to believe in one idol god. And they restricted the mitzvah of circumcision, on learning Torah, and keeping of the Sabbath. So the Jews had to do it secretly, and they used the dreidel when the enemy was approaching, and put away their books, and they played dreidel. And in commemoration, we had all the grandchildren were here, and they were playing dreidel. It was really a lively game. So I'm sorry I didn't take pictures of that. It would have been very effective, but go figure. So anyway, where are we? Here we are. with the Romans destroying the temple. Well, listen, there's much to talk about. We know that we have fifth columnists in our midst today. Look, here's a picture of a yeshiva. They're lighting the Hanukkah candles in the yeshiva. You can do it with candles. You can do it with oil, right? And there you are, lighting the candles in commemoration of the great mitzvah. So that is Hanukkah, and I want to talk a little bit about the fifth columnist. The fifth columnist among us, the people, for instance, Hillel. They have the audacity, Hillel Organization on College. You know, they have the audacity to send out flyers and requests for money in the observant communities of Brooklyn and Nassau County, the 5 towns, and make themselves as if they are representative of the people on college outreach to bring the people into the college students into Torah, but in effect they're bringing them into ignorance and apathy and antagonistic towards real Torah. But they advertise as, oh, we have Friday night meals, you know, we have Friday night meals, and for the dessert they give you a poison like a Rabbi Judy will speak to you. And you say, Rabbi Judy. Everybody can get a title rabbi. I wish I could have a title rabbi, but I never earned it because for many reasons. But the point is, to become a real rabbi, you have to study, you have to learn, you have to work, you have to understand where these rulings that we have today come from. They're not just given a crash course in Judaism so that you appear to be a tremendous, intelligent human Jewish understanding being to the masses who are ignorant of even the first, getting into first base, or even to know the difference between an aleph or a base. So to them you think like you're the greatest. You know, I got a title rabbi. Means nothing. Look, you have to understand where he got his degree from, right? Not a crash course or some kind of a course on TV or some kind of a course given by a college professor who is an atheist himself, but and whose faculty don't believe in the creation theory or the belief in one God and the God of the Jewish people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. No, but we're talking about rabbis who you know are important and have gotten a degree to understand how and why they base their decisions on. What they base their decisions on. And that means going back over time to the different books on rulings that were made by previous generations all the way back to Mount Sinai, where they were learning for 40 years in the desert with the written Torah in front of them. And all the questions that arose in that study were answered, if not by 1 over 10, or the one who knew 1 over 50, or 1 over 100, or 1 over 1,000, but even he didn't know it. It went to Moses. Moses, who gave a ruling on what they were learning. So based on those rulings, look, they didn't have light bulbs, electric light bulbs. They didn't have automobiles in those days. So how do we come to say that we can't ride in a car on the Sabbath, for instance, or any kind of a ruling, right? So you have to go back, and what's applicable? You have to go back to the Malachas, right? To the oral Torah that was taught at Sinai. Explanation of all the different sentences. You know, there is a mass of water enveloped the earth on the second day that said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. That's what it says in the Bible, the Jewish Bible, the Old Testament known to the Gentiles. It says over there, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Firmament. What's a firmament? Firmament. Firmament is a heaven. Let there be a divider between the waters above the divisor and the waters below the divisor. The waters below fell through gravity and became heavens. Heavens in which people and birds can live in. The waters above through evaporation, condensation, became the heavens, also called heavens, from there and all the way to eternity, or to the end of what is it called? Infinity, into infinity, right? That's all heavens, all the different worlds, right? What is a world? A world is a sun or a star. To us, it appears like a bright star, a sun. But over there, all those twinkle, twinkle little stars are all worlds with planets revolving around them, right? But the Torah was not a history book. Did not teach science. Excuse me, it wasn't a scientific book where they're going to teach gravity and the like of physics so that they can explain it to the people. But it wasn't meant to be dealt with in those days. It's a schematic. The Torah, the Bible, also known as the Bible, is a schematic history of the most significant people. And after chapter 12, it was only Jews that God had interaction with. And through the events that happened to the Jewish people, God's thoughts, theories, and teachings were brought down. Through those events that happened, that happened throughout the history of the world and were incorporated in the Bible, God's thoughts and teachings and theories were brought forth, and we learn from them. You should walk in the ways of God, right? To fear the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and all the nations of the world will have fear and awe of you. 28:9 Deuteronomy. 28, write it down, Deuteronomy 28:9. So, yeah, listen, on these, there's so many things I want to talk about. Look, we have a website, firstshabbos.org, right? You can call this number, 280-0662, for any questions you have. Or you can buy the book, Judaism Makes Sense. Chapter 1, Belief in Jewish God. Chapter 18, Gentile Responsibility. Chapter 26, Avoiding Hell. 29, Coming of the Real Mashiach, Messiah, right? All the Gentiles say, oh, we got proof that these words mean the Messiah is here. Believe in me and you will be saved. Salvation, eternal salvation. Come down from your seats, come down and accept your God-man and you'll be saved. But the concept of Mashiach and Messiah doesn't mean anything about salvation, that you have to be saved by saying, I believe. No, nothing to do with that. The Messiah's salvation means Mashiach, when the Mashiach will come and everyone will recognize him as the Mashiach, the King of the Jews, then he will be anointed. Mashiach means anointed one, anointed King of the Jews, who will represent the surrogate of God, and such a personality that the whole world will realize that the God of the Jews are the way. And the world will keep on continuously functioning, but the entire world will realize that the God of the Jews, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is the real God, the creator of heaven and earth. And all of these Mickey Mouse ideologies that want to come forth, and all the adherents to their philosophy, unfortunately, are in for a rude awakening. They're in for an awakening. So in the meantime, we have to educate a real Jewish education among those observant Jewish people, and all those that are born of a Jewish mother, or those who went through a practice of conversion through halacha, through a meaningful conversion, and not just walking down the aisle and say, I believe. No, you speak to Ivanka Trump. It's too bad that she doesn't speak out from that position of hers about the importance and the truth and the belief in Judaism based on the Bible. Based on the Bible, Netanyahu says, read that Jerusalem is the capital of the Jewish people. Read it in the Bible. First time I heard him mention Bible. The point is, you take the Bible and you study it, especially under the Slavatka teachings. Slavatka meaning they got the Torah all the way from Sinai, and they wrote it down in plain English language through their one of their recent contemporaries, Rabbi Victor Miller, and all his books on ideology make terrific sense. Read his books, Rabbi Victor Miller. Look, you can read our book by yours truly, Judaism Makes Sense, but it's not gonna teach you like Rabbi Miller, that's for sure. His books are terrific. You can buy Judaism Makes Sense on Amazon, or you can buy any of Rabbi Victor Miller's books by Amazon. Make sure the author is Victor Miller, Zechel Tzadik V'Rocha, because other people trying to step forward and say that he said such and such, or I had very close contact with him and I can report what he said. No, read and get the book by books, right? There's the books on every one of the portions of the Torah and on ideology as well. Everything brought down with succinct sources in the Bible. And basically, what does it say over there in the Bible? I mean, God wanted a surrogate to lead the world into a life of following His ways, and many people came forward and realized that there is a God, that He is the God of the Jewish people, the Creator of heaven and of earth, but they failed to teach it to their children. And Abraham came along, right? The second sentence is, God hovered over the face of the waters. What do you mean he was hovering? He didn't want to land. What's the story over there? He was looking for a surrogate. It was open to everybody. Everybody could take a chance and be a true believer. And many did. Hanach, there are a number of people that came forward and believed that there was a one God. Noah, God made a covenant with him, but he saw that he did not teach his children and his grandchildren the ways of God, because before you know it, they were out of teachers. They were no longer effective. They were assimilated and gave up on their theory, even though God made a covenant with them to keep. We have some Noahide congregations throughout the world who believe in the 7 mitzvahs, 7 commandments that God gave the Gentiles to follow, right? The 7 commandments. The Jewish people took it upon themselves to incorporate those 7 commandments of Noah into the Jewish Bible, to the Holy Bible. So where are we? So who came forward? It was Abraham. And again, this pasuk means sentence is very important, because God knows the future. And God said in 18:19, and I know that Abraham will teach his children and his household the ways of God of charity and justice. He knows that. How did he know it? If a man has free will. God knows all the combinations that possibly a person could choose. He knows all the possible combinations that there are. Like a lottery, you buy all the numbers that could possibly come out, using the Powerball as the base for every one of the other numbers, whatever. So he knew the numbers. He knew that Abraham would choose righteousness and virtuous kindness.